The city moved in restless waves, under the cloudy afternoon sky, and among those rushing footsteps walked Adrian Hale, the young millionaire CEO everyone admired, yet no one truly knew, and his face carried a quiet heaviness like a storm hidden behind the calm, and he sat alone on a worn wooden bench near the small community park where the laughter of children painted a gentle warmth over the cold air, and he stared at the ground, lost in a silence he could not shake. And that was when a tiny voice touched the space between sorrow and hope, and a little girl, maybe 6 years old, with bright, curious eyes and a faded pink backpack, stood in front of him, her head tilted in wonder as she asked, "Mister, why do you look sad?" And he blinked, surprised that anyone, especially a child, even noticed him, and she stepped closer, her shoes tapping lightly in the dirt, and she added, "Want to meet my mommy? She always says talking helps." And Adrian looked at her, puzzled by her bold innocence, and before he could respond, she gently grabbed his hand with the natural trust of someone who believed the world was still full of kindness, and she said, "Come on, she is right over there." And he felt something unfamiliar, a lightness pulling him forward as the girl led him past the swings and trees toward a tiny apartment building beside the park, its walls old but filled with life. And as they walked, he asked her name, and she replied, "Lila," with a proud smile, and then pointed at the window with a cracked flower pot, saying, "Mommy is making dinner. I know she will be happy to see you." And Adrian felt a strange warmth rising in his chest, as if the heaviness he carried was slowly loosening around him, and he wondered how a stranger, a child, at that had sensed what even his closest employees failed to see. And he let her lead him, because something in her voice, something pure and untouched, whispered that this moment could change everything in a way he never expected. Inside the small apartment, the air carried the soft aroma of warm soup and freshly washed clothes, and the walls were decorated with hand-drawn pictures made by little hands, each one filled with colors that didn't quite stay inside the lines, yet made the room feel brighter than any mansion Adrian had ever stepped into. And Lila called out, "Mommy, I brought someone." And her mother stepped from the tiny kitchen, wiping her hands on an old towel, and when her eyes met Adrian, something gentle but cautious flickered. She was young, yet her face carried the quiet lines of someone who had endured storms without letting them win, and she asked, "Are you a friend of Lila?" And before he could speak, Lila cheerfully answered he was sad. "Mommy, so I thought you could talk to him like you talk to me when I am scared." And her mother knelt beside her, smoothing her hair with a tenderness that made Adrian's heart ache, as if remembering something long forgotten, and she introduced herself as Mara and offered him a seat at the small dining table. And Adrian sat, feeling strangely out of place, yet oddly safe in the warm glow of their humble home. And Mara asked gently, "Are you all right?" And he opened his mouth, but words struggled, and she waited with the kind of patience that felt like an embrace. And slowly, the story spilled from him, not with fancy language or business terms, but raw truth he had been working nonstop, drowning in responsibilities, expectations, loneliness, and he confessed that even with all his success, he felt empty, like everything he built was made of glass, ready to shatter. And Mara listened, not interrupting, not judging, simply holding space for him in a way no one else ever had. And Lila climbed onto the chair beside him, drawing little hearts on a scrap paper and whispering, "You can have this, it makes people feel better." And when she handed him the messy, colorful heart, something inside him softened, like a frozen river beginning to thaw. And Mara served him soup, warm, simple, comforting, and he realized it was the first real meal, shared with real warmth, he had tasted in years. And as they ate, the soft hum of their tiny home wrapped around him like a blanket, reminding him of something precious he had lost without noticing. After dinner, Lila insisted on showing Adrian her favorite place, the rooftop, where she said the stars looked like diamonds dancing, and he followed her up the narrow stairs while Mara cleaned up, humming quietly behind them. And when they stepped onto the rooftop, the wind carried the scent of the evening sky, and Lila raised her arms wide, saying, "This is where I tell my wishes." And Adrian asked what she wished for, and she replied, "I wish Mommy could smile more, because she works too much and she gets tired, but she still reads me stories." and makes pancakes shaped like cats, and I wish someone would help her and love her because she deserves it. And her innocence cut into Adrian's heart deeper than he expected, and he felt a strange connection forming, so naturally it frightened him, and he knelt beside her saying, "Your mommy is very strong and very kind," and Lila nodded proudly. "She is the strongest and the kindest," and then looking straight into his eyes, she added, "You look like someone who needs someone kind too," and her words carried a softness that felt like destiny whispering through a child's voice, and Mara soon joined them with a soft chuckle, asking, "Are you two making wishes without me?" And she sat beside them, her hair brushing lightly against his shoulder as they watched the night settle, and Adrian felt warmth blooming inside him, warmth he had forgotten existed, and they talked about simple things, dreams, childhood memories, hopes, fears, and for the first time Adrian laughed without forcing it, and Mara smiled at the sound as if it was something rare and precious. And when Lila eventually grew sleepy, Mara carried her downstairs, leaving Adrian alone for a moment under the quiet sky, and he realized how deeply he longed for this connection, this softness, this place where he wasn't the CEO, not the billionaire, not the distant figure people admired yet never approached, but simply a man searching for meaning. And he knew he didn't want this night to end, because something in this small world felt more real than anything he had built in his towering office. When Adrian stepped back into the apartment, he found Mara laying a blanket over the sleeping Lila, her touch tender and full of a love he never knew in his own childhood. And when she turned toward him, there was a hesitation in her eyes, a quiet fear, maybe that this moment was temporary, that rich people came and went, leaving behind only memories. And Mara whispered, "Thank you for being kind to her. She doesn't open up to many people." And Adrian stepped closer, feeling the weight of truth forming in his chest, and he told her that Lila had given him something priceless, something he had been missing for years, a sense of belonging. And Mara lowered her gaze, unsure how to respond. Then she confessed softly, "Life has been hard, and people don't stay long when they see the struggle." And Adrian felt the ache in her voice, and he gently assured her that he wasn't here out of pity nor curiosity, but because he felt drawn to something he couldn't explain, a warmth, a hope, a connection he wanted to understand. And Mara looked up, her eyes shimmering with something fragile yet brave, and the silence between them felt alive, almost magnetic, and he realized he wanted to be part of this tiny family, even if he didn't deserve it yet. And he asked timidly if he could visit again, and Mara smiled a smile that felt like sunrise after a long cold night, and she nodded, saying, "Lila would love that, and maybe I would too." And those words wrapped around him like the promise of a new beginning. And as he walked toward the door, Lila, half asleep, murmured, "Don't be sad anymore, mister. We can be your family if you want." And those tiny words rooted deeply in his heart, forming a truth he couldn't ignore. And he turned back, seeing Mara watching him with gentle hope, and he felt a sense of fate settling softly around them like the first light of dawn, whispering that this unexpected meeting was not the end of a story, but the beginning of something he never expected, something warm and brave and beautiful.